The Legend of Zelda. Between its swords and shields, its heroes and villains, the magic of its adventure, it's arguably the most iconic fantasy franchise in gaming today. But it was never intended to be that. In fact, it started as something smaller and more intimate. Something personal. After the massive success of his arcade platformer Donkey Kong in 1981, designer Shigeru Miyamoto had risen to a position of power and respect at Nintendo. So naturally, when the company moved towards developing and releasing games for their own console, Miyamoto was given the reins of a new team named Nintendo R&D4 and given the directive to make great, exclusive content for the platform. In the beginning, Miyamoto had two very basic ideas that he wanted R&D4 to work on concurrently. The first was very linear, where the events of its story and its gameplay happened in a strict sequence. Super Mario Bros. Eventually emerged from this idea. The second was very much the opposite, intentionally so. Miyamoto wanted this project to be as open-ended as possible. He wanted players to actually have to think about what to do next, to solve puzzles and to plan ahead. Now, this wasn't unheard of in the PC gaming market of the time, as evidenced by titles like Origins Ultima, but PC RPGs were more cruel than kind, and more often than not had very little focus or direction. The console market had even fewer options. That was an industry filled with action platformers and shooters. Here, Miyamoto saw an opportunity to create something unique and focused in that space. Using this direction as a framework, Miyamoto took heavy inspiration from memories of his youth. His childhood afternoons spent hiking and exploring the countryside of Kyoto, where he found fields, forests, and lakes evolved into an overworld for players to similarly traverse. Caves that he found on these little adventures became dungeons to delve into, and the maze of sliding doors in his home informed their labyrinth-like structure. It was simply a huge world, and you wouldn't be able to explore it all in one sitting, at least not on your first playthrough. To circumvent this, the programmers added a revolutionary battery-powered save feature to the game, making this project the very first console game to ever include saving and loading a player's progress. It can't be understated how important a step that this was for console games to take. It's a feature used in nearly every single game today. Now, Miyamoto's main priority, especially in the NES era, was and always has been making games fun first. So the story for this project was never a main focus. It was meant simply to be a groundwork for the gameplay. So it's not that surprising to learn that Miyamoto wasn't actually the writer for this project. Instead, his co-director Takashi Tezuka took on that role. Tezuka was a longtime fan of classic high fantasy novels like J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth and Saga, but unlike the grandeur of Tolkien's stories and mythos, this adventure felt decidedly smaller, like something more akin to fairy tale than high fantasy. The land of Hyrule was peaceful and prosperous, until the day that Ganon and his army invaded with the intention of stealing the otherworldly Triforce. After he got his hands on a fraction of this sacred artifact, that which represented power, Hyrule's princess Zelda broke one of the other pieces into 8 shards and scattered them across the land. And after being kidnapped herself, she left instructions behind with her handmaiden Impa to find someone courageous enough to stand up and fight against Ganon. Impa finds such a hero in the protagonist of our quest, a small elven boy named Link, who took heavy inspiration from Walt Disney's Peter Pan. Zelda has a somewhat more interesting story, though. While her character and her role in the plot were set in place from the beginning, her name was not. Miyamoto wanted her name to be something special, something uncommon and magical to his fellow countrymen. Eventually, he discovered one Zelda Fitzgerald, wife of Great Gatsby author F. Scott Fitzgerald, and fell in love with the sound of her name. The rest is history. The plot for this Legend of Zelda as it plays out in the game actually resembles a very basic version of the hero's journey, or monomyth, a storytelling structure that many narratives intentionally or unintentionally fall into. Boy leaves home, acquires magical sword from a wizard, defeats foes and overcomes great obstacles all while growing stronger, acquires the pieces of a mystical artifact, confronts and does battle with the villain, rescues Princess, and everything returns to normal. It wasn't anything spectacular, but given the era the game was developed in and Miyamoto's focus on fun first, it was completely serviceable. Interestingly, whispers on the internet suggested that the game wasn't always supposed to be so simple or even so strictly fantasy or fairy tale. Though Nintendo hasn't outright confirmed this themselves, according to hearsay, Miyamoto has stated that early in development the pieces of the Triforce were originally intended to be powerful microchips sent from the future, and that the player was meant to be able to travel between these two settings. This was supposedly also the origin of the player character's name. He was to be the link between these worlds. The final piece needed to complete this puzzle was a soundtrack that matched the fantastical tone of the game and its world. The natural choice for a composer was Koji Kondo, a Nintendo employee who was quickly becoming their go-to in-house musician, having previously composed Punch-Out and Miyamoto's other project, Super Mario Bros. Kondo would spend ages working on his music, writing the pieces and then listening to them for hours. His thought process was that if gamers were to listen to his soundtracks over and over and over, he would do the same to ensure that it didn't get repetitive. And the result of all this hard work was definitely worth it. You can't call Koji Kondo's Zelda music anything but iconic. Like, you know you've got something special when even the simple jingles from your game have entered the public consciousness. Though the total number of tracks in the game was a bit lacking, only about 5 full songs, almost every single one has left a lasting impact. The opening theme is equal parts epic and foreboding, preparing players for the journey that they were about to embark on. The overworld theme trades that foreboding for whimsy, expressing a tone of swashbuckling and fearlessness that any adventurer should feel. And yet, the labyrinth theme is creepy, with notes just crawling out of the speakers one after another to make you as uncomfortable and as uneasy as the dungeons they accompany should. It was brilliant. Nintendo had something special on their hands, a lovingly crafted, intimate fairy tale of their own creation that harkened back to feelings of childish wonder and adventure. But that didn't calm the fear of Nintendo's management. In a market full of fast-paced platformers and action games, there were those within the company who were worried that gamers wouldn't respond kindly to Zelda's open-ended map, proto-RPG elements, save system, and complex objectives. But others were even more confident and recognized the value and individuality of the game they'd created, so much so that they wanted people to know it the second they laid eyes on it. They did this in North America by giving Zelda unique golden packaging with a portion of the front cut out to show its similarly gilded cartridge. The Legend of Zelda was released on February 21st, 1986 on the Famicom in Japan, and on August 22nd, 1987 on the Nintendo Entertainment System in North America. Despite the worries of Nintendo's management, the game was a smashing success, being the first NES game to sell more than 1 million copies. It ended its run at well over 6.5 million. And the masses weren't alone. Critics also fell in love with the game. Since its release, The Legend of Zelda has consistently been named one of the best NES games ever, finding its way to the top of Nintendo Power's top 30 Nintendo games from its very first issue, well into the 1990s. It currently holds the Guinness Book of World Records title for the highest rated game of all time. Years later, The Legend of Zelda remains one of the most influential games ever. Its non-linear gameplay, open-world map, and revolutionary save system paved the way for longer quests to be had on consoles. It solidified the action-adventure genre as a powerhouse in the gaming space, and its focus on open-ended gameplay was arguably decades ahead of its time. Shifts in the industry today trend towards this idea, and some of the most successful games of modern times have pretty much mastered it. After a success like this, it was unthinkable that this game wouldn't get a sequel or spawn a franchise. But could those games possibly live up to this one? Who am I kidding? This is freaking Zelda! This game was only the first step in a lifetime of adventures. What's up guys, Lee here. I really appreciate you giving this video a watch. I've been working on getting this ready for a while, so it's exciting that it's finally out there. I very much hope that you enjoyed it, and please tell me what you thought of it in the comments below. For now, you can follow me on Twitter at Furst to keep up to date with everything I'm working on. I had to put the te in front of there because Furst was taken, don't worry about it. You can also check out Arcadia, a new channel that some friends and I just started up. We have a lot in the pipeline over there, so please go check it out. I think you'll dig it. What do I say to like end this? I don't actually know. I guess I could steal Ryder's thing. Ryder, I'm gonna steal your thing. DF TBA.